Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Paul and I'm here, daily it's been for the last 3 months, talking about books and books in my life and books in my study and my own books as well sometimes. And I thought today I'd talk about my book, The Novel Inside You, which is a book that I published in 2019 with Snowbooks. They're very small and very lovely Snowbooks, and they let me do a book with my own pictures in colour, which was amazing. It's a book about creativity in all of its forms and giving yourself permission to create the things you want to do, and at some point putting my own drawings from the time that I was writing these essays into the book became really important somehow. That's the view from my friend Deborah's house in Ripponden in Yorkshire. Anyway, I thought I'd read you the introduction so you can get an idea of what this book's about. It's still available. Quote, "They say everyone's got a book inside them, don't they? It's a horrible old cliche, of course, but I think it's true that everyone has a story to tell. Most have more than one story, and when you really think about it, you've got loads of stories you could tell, but who wants to hear them? And how could you ever write them in a way that would make people want to read them? I've been teaching creative writing for more than 25 years. More than that now, I should think. I've taught just about everywhere you can. Classes and workshops and courses, tutorials and seminars in universities and schools, at festivals and conventions. I've taught on residentials and retreats, by correspondence, and even in cyberspace. I've taught beginners and professionals, kids and PhD students, and people in their 80s. I love teaching. I love telling people stories about the different ways to write and about the many different books I've read and writers I've met and learned from. I've got loads of good stories. I've learned a great deal about writing from other writers, both on the page and in person. All these things I try to share when I teach. I've been a teacher for all that time and a writer for much longer. I've been a published novelist for 24 years, 30 now, I guess, or 29. And I've written in most genres and for every age group. I've been a serious diarist all my life, and I believe that it's in our journals that our real writing actually begins. Our busy books, as one of my first and most brilliant teachers called those books, in which we are allowed to write, draw, and create anything at all, and never have to show another person, unless we decide to do so. Our journals are where we have complete freedom, and that is the place that true writing begins. So in this book, I want to tell the story of how it all fits together for me. The real writing practice of journals, the storytelling involved in teaching, and how putting stories together can seem like the most fantastic activity ever invented. I don't want this to be a kind of A to Z how-to book. There are many books like that on the market. I want this one to be a go and do book. I once co-edited a book that worked its way very carefully through the chronological stages of creating, drafting, finishing, and publishing a piece of creative work. It's called the Creative Writing Course Book, and Julia Bell and I published it with Macmillan in 2001, and it's really pretty good. We drew upon the expertise of 40 contributors and produced a book lots of people have found very useful over the years. This present book isn't as programmatic or as logical as that one. It's much more personal, I think. It's about my life in stories and teaching, and how I've worked for all these years at ways of approaching the telling of stories. The only way I can present that learning is through further stories. So reading this book won't be a case of following chapters to do with characterization, plotting, responding to feedback, etc. It won't be a case of following instructions and carefully doing set out exercises either. There will, however, be lots of exercises and things to try out along the way, but the going will be more colourful and chaotic, perhaps, than it would be in an orderly textbook. I'm afraid this isn't an orderly textbook. It's a journey into my own writing practice and an attempt at explaining some of the things I've learned. It's my story, and it isn't perfect. I've made mistakes and taken wrong turnings over the years. I've learned from everything, and I want to tell the story of my adventures, and not in some stripped down, impersonal way, organised into easily digestible lessons. I'm not going to spoon feed the reader. I never believed in spoon feeding the students I was teaching, and I certainly don't intend to start spoon feeding my readers. We teach best through stories, not bullet points. In this book, I'm plundering my past writing, reading and teaching experience, and I'm zigzagging through time. I'm presenting you with an array of epiphanies I've had about fiction and autobiography. What I'm hoping is I've written a book that's about nourishing the whole creative self. Maybe I should write, maybe you even want to read, a book about how to write a commercial novel and do it step by step, logical, cynical step. And maybe I could show you pie charts and flip charts and diagrammatical structures. But it would ring hollow, I think. It would taste like nothing, and it would be boring as hell. If you want to write the real stuff, then you have to know your real self. And you have to do that with your busy books, with your journals. You have to hold onto your hat and dig down deep. It might be a bumpy ride. If you want to write the real stuff, you soon find out it's not for the wimpy. Shortcuts and slick ideas and commercially minded recipes aren't worth much in the end. Just look in charity shops, like I do all the time, and take heed of the multiple unwanted and unloved copies of hyped up crap. Look at all those heaped up paperbacks of 50 Shades of Grey, for example. You want to write books that someone will treasure, don't you? Not books they'll just sling away once the thrill has gone. Now, I'm not being snobby about commercial fiction. I love popular fiction far more, as it happens, than self-consciously literary fiction. All I'm saying is that in order to write anything at all of value, you have to reach deep inside yourself and pay attention to the person you set free when you give yourself permission to write completely freely. I think you have to do that first before you can write anything at all. Like I say, no shortcuts, no easy answers. So, I should point out that this book, The Novel Inside You, doesn't necessarily refer to the massive selling blockbuster that's waiting inside of you to break out. The novel inside of you is actually your endless journal. It's the ongoing story of you. That's what we're going to try and liberate. And it's the thing you have to remember to go looking for. There'll be many distractions along the way, but you have to remember to keep looking for you. And that is what this book is hoping to help you do. So that was the beginning of my novel Inside You that came out 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago. And they were essays in 3 sections: thinking, doing, and keeping on, which I think kind of responded to my feelings that what you do is you gather material and you sit out in places, you go out into the world and gather stuff, whatever that is, and then you find ways of turning that into something, of knitting it together cleverly and sometimes unconsciously. And then keeping on is all about the resilience to keep going through all the setbacks, all the knockbacks we get, all the nasty aggressions from the gatekeepers and those telling you in various ways that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. and how you gain the resilience to push towards what you want to do, whatever that is. So the title, even though it's the novel inside you, it's not about writing the novel that you can sell. It's disguised as that because that's such a hoary old cliche. And only the people who haven't read this think that's what this book is about. It turns it on its head. The novel inside you is the story you've been sitting on all your life, but you don't know how to tell yet. It's the story of you. And that's not even about life writing. It's about the story that you most want to tell in the world. And that can be anything at all. You just have to work to find out what it is, or make the circumstances right in order for that story to emerge. Anyway, that's just the beginning of that book, and it occurred to me to return to it this week, having answered those questions that people were putting to me on my channel so nicely the other day, because they made me think about my practice and my career and decisions I've made and methods of work that I've employed over the years. And they always go back to that. It sent me back to think about that kind of methodology. And they all go in together. My reading is the same. And my approach to this channel is the same as well, in that I absorbed what everybody else was doing in this format. And when it came to to make myself brave enough to do my own version of a YouTube channel, it was only by doing it in exactly the way that I would, that I could do it. I couldn't pretend to be somebody else. So much of life, when you look around, is people pretending to be other people. Everybody's cosplaying something else that they've seen somebody do. And that always kind of bewildered me as a kid and somebody growing up. And I think if I've done anything, I've only ever approached things in the way that I would do them. And I think we absorb influences all the time, and we have to. But we have to blend them in our own unique way, our own strange way of doing things. And if I can encourage people to do that, to realize that all the answers are inside their own head, inside their own hearts. They know what they like to spend their time reading. They know what their own stories are, really. Everybody has an aesthetic somewhere, and they just need the tools and the courage to give voice to it. Wow, I really am sounding like a creative writing teacher again. I haven't taught for a while. And as I said in that introduction, it's something that I absolutely loved. Going back to the first classes I ever taught when I was 22 to older ladies in a seaside hotel in Grange-over-Sands. In fact, the first chapter that you get to in this, after that introduction, is an account of that first class that I ever taught. So I was doing it from quite early, and always teaching people of all ages, and always mixed ability. And that stood me in good stead, I think. Teaching all kinds of different people at the same time, with different expectations. I think creative writing teaching is one of the great kind of levelers, really. It brings people together to share authentic, although I dislike that badly used word, authentic experiences. And I haven't done it for a while, not for want of trying, really. I mean, I walked away from academia 13 years ago because I thought academia had sold its soul to the devil, basically. Having worked in it for 20 odd years, I really thought universities had gone to hell in the UK. And as far as I can see, they're still there. And creative writing departments certainly had gone to hell. I could talk about that at length, and maybe I will at some point. But I walked away from that. And since then, I've done bits and pieces. I've done some workshop stuff, kind of pitching up at places. A tiny bit of things for people like Arvon, but They used to ask me all the time to go and do Arvon residentials, but they stopped when I started publishing more genre fiction, which is weird. Really weird of them. I think they just forgot who I was, which was a shame. But, you know, more fool them. I was great teaching those residential courses. I gave my all in those weeks. But you fall out of style, you fall out of favour. That's just the nature of it. Or people don't know who you are because you're not publishing big mainstream books. And maybe those are just the people that they want to have doing these things. It's become a bit of a star system as well, I think, writing, because of things like Richard and Judy and all that kind of stuff, that people only respect people who sell shitloads. And that's a kind of hideous Simon Cowell X Factor kind of thinking that becomes applied to all of the arts. You're only of value if you sell shitloads, which is, I don't think it was always like that. It's a shame, though. It means if you're kind of struggling along, doing your own thing without that kind of commercial success, people aren't quite, they don't quite have the respect that they do for other people. And I do remember new neighbours walking in, them throwing a party, and one of them asking me, "Oh, you're the writer?" And my kind of feeling like I had to think about it. Like, well, yes, I am, but being embarrassed about it because my sense of ego and ambition had been knocked out of me, pummeled out of me by the industry. This is only a few years ago, but it was amazing that on being asked, "Are you a writer?" I had to wince and feel like a bit of a pillock. Whereas in the past, I would have been, you know, very proud and yes, of course. It's funny how your ambition can be beaten out of you by experience, and you have to work every day to build it back. And I have to say, doing these videos has been helpful and instructive on that front. Interacting with people through the comments, especially. And people completely new to me, people who had no idea who I was, wanting to engage with this world of bookish nonsense that I go on about. I feel like I've opened a door. I feel like I've opened a door that wasn't there before. And that's what we do whenever we create something new. So I feel like I've made something here, which I'm glad about. As I've said before, if a year goes by without you trying something new or making something new, that's a shame. I think you should always try. But anyway, that's enough lecturing for today. I will go, and next time I will talk more about other people's books, I promise. Okay, goodbye, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Goodbye.